you want to avoid the efficiency-centric approach. Let's look at what happens. So we're going to isolate the measurement here of an interaction with a human being, right? So the question becomes is, what is the impact when you introduce an IVR to a customer before they get to that human being versus not introducing an IVR to that same interaction? Is there a difference in satisfaction? The promptness in speaking to a person, obviously that would make sense. If you introduce an IVR, you can see that it drops almost by a full point. And these are the mean scores against those 975 brands. So in other words, how you read this is that whenever I read a question, a 7 represents, that's the average score of all those brands, of all those millions of interactions, if they got to an IVR before they got to the CSR. This, on the other hand, an 8 is the promptness in speaking to a person if they didn't go through the IVR. That one makes sense. But how interesting is this? Knowledge of the representative actually goes down if you go through an IVR. Well, what's so insane about it is that the IVR was originally designed to get you to the right person so you wouldn't be transferred. And yet here, if you don't have an IVR, the perception is that the knowledge of the representative is higher. Now, we shouldn't jump to conclusion. There are other more complicated contributing factors to this, but as a whole, it's directional that the IVR or almost anything that you put between a person trying to get a serious, emotionally laden problem solved and someone who can solve it, if you put anything between them, you're going to create higher levels of dissatisfaction. Courtesy goes down. Concern for your needs goes down if you use an IVR versus if you don't use an IVR. Timeliness of resolving your problem, question, or request goes down. So there is a lot of impact when you start to introduce this notion of automation and technology to a service environment. I like to call this containment obsession disorder. It's a disorder. I mean, it is insanity if you talk to some of these folks. Hopefully with our data and information, we can help change some minds, but it's very similar to the other disorder that I had mentioned earlier. And I wish I had a professional voice talent up here to come tell us about, if you have containment obsession disorder, you can expect happy bean counters and short-term ROI, but discouraged employees, angry customers. Some of your customers may experience long-term loss of interest in doing business with you, and uncontrollable rantings in social media. That is the sad truth of what's going to happen with containment obsession disorder. And in addition, if your agents aren't prepared for this, they can also be affected with shortness of breath, nausea, and dry mouth. All things that we want to avoid. All right, how are we doing on time here? Okay. Let's talk about some things that what our research indicates is required to delight the customers. Now, we're going to focus on that, but it's important, I think, for us to understand on the left-hand side the effort involved in getting to a delight state. There is a real question from a viability standpoint if organizations should make the investment inside their particular market and where they are playing inside that market in a delight experience, because it's very expensive and it's really hard to do. So on the left-hand side, as you see the J.D. Power and Associates loyalty curve go up, you're going to see some boxes come out. These boxes, let me get to the boxes. These boxes represent essentially poor performers. That is, on the left-hand side here, you're going to see is correlated with the relative effort it takes to go from a poor performer to merely a below average performer. And if you compare that to go from below average to average, on this side it takes a little bit more effort. Now on those left-hand, on this bottom, what you see is the scale. This is a non-linear customer satisfaction scale that we've created. And it goes from 0 on the left-hand side to 10 on the right-hand side, but you notice that 7 is somewhere here in the middle. The other thing on the right-hand side is the loyalty correlation. And what you really want to pay attention to is where on this graph there is relative, there's not too much distance in the difference in loyalty and where it starts to go up or where it starts to precipitously decline. This is where organizations can make the most money by solving issues at the low end and creating more people at the high end. So let's talk quickly about what these red circles mean. These are channels where human beings are primarily involved. Chat includes things like SMS as well. But these are all listed here: retail, phone, chat, email. And this is what we're talking about. This is customer support, is where we're deriving the data from. The blue are self-service channels. So that's your mobile, your web, your IVR self-serve. And then social media kind of has its own little color because it's a combination of both, but it has very unique dynamics to it that are different from both of these channels. This center graphic is meant to depict essentially where organizations who holistically have average satisfaction are providing at least 4 of these channels, especially on the support side to customers. But every single year it goes up more and more. You have to essentially provide all the available channels, and the reason why is because whether you like it or not, or even whether your competitors are doing it or not, folks are interfacing with organizations who have gotten this channel strategy right. They have you totally covered on chat. They have you totally covered on mobile in terms of getting out, like power outages in Arizona. You'll get text that your region's going to be affected and how quickly the service is going to be back up. And so they're dealing with all, even utilities, many of them are involved in all aspects. What you'll notice is missing is any integration here. Today, most organizations do not integrate their service channels, and that is the norm, but there are several companies who have their service channels integrated, and there is huge payoffs for organizations who do it. For one thing, it gets you out of the silo mentality inside your organization. Today, you have folks who are sitting on the retail side, don't necessarily talk to the call center people. And the call center people, you have segregated groups who are dealing only with chat or email. And if they come into one, the other people within inside that same organization have no idea that there's just been an interaction. So this is average. But for us to get to the next level of good, there really needs to be much more and stronger integration. What you'll notice on this left-hand side is that you can really start to see the difference between an average performer and a consistently good in terms of the investments that they've made within their company in a few primary areas. One is technology. It's impossible to integrate channels, as an example, and know that somebody was just on your website, they had a failed web experience, self-serve experience, and now the phone rings, and the rep who picks up the phone should know about that failed experience. That's an example of good integration that very rarely happens today. In the future, it absolutely has to happen. Moving from good to great takes a great deal of effort, and this is well beyond investments in technology. This really is investments on the people end of things. It involves, at the end of the day, this notion that any brand can learn from this. The most successful brands that we measure, when you talk to the folks, what has emerged is that I have a trusted partnership when I call in. and that is very rare. The best example that I can give is USAA. To give you an example of how far ahead they are from other organizations that we measure, is if you ask their customers who have the same number of problems that other organizations have, why are you calling in? We give you, it's binary. It's either for a problem or it's for a request, one of those two. 96% of those customers say they're just calling in for a request. Only 4% say I'm calling in for a problem. Well, the average is 50% are calling in for a problem. But USAA over time has created a relationship with their customers that is so unique and so powerful that their customers actually view their interaction with someone who they're calling in about a problem with as an opportunity to consult, an opportunity to get together and solve problems. And so that's really where we see the future going in terms of what it takes to delight your customers. I think, are we out of time? Okay. And so with that, I'll stop, but hopefully this notion of working to create a trusted partnership is something that resonates with you all. Thank you.